Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to talk about, I'm sure, is everybody's favorite buzzword topic, building a skills-based organization. My name's Jesus. If you haven't heard of me, if you haven't seen me running around, again, if you didn't see me this morning, you'll find me somewhere. I'm all over the place. I'm a director here at IAMPHENOM, running some of our product teams, specifically talent management. And if you didn't get a chance to join us earlier today or even yesterday, I'm welcoming Lucas here from Deloitte. We did announce a strategic partnership earlier today or yesterday. So obviously, if anybody has questions on the partnership, anybody wants to learn more, I welcome you to the Deloitte booth. Come on over, say hello. But I'm welcomed by Lucas. Lucas, introduce yourself.
Yeah, Jesus, thank you. And it's great to be here. Good afternoon to the 200 of you in the room. Good to meet you, Lucas Watanabe. I'm a managing director at Deloitte Consulting. I spend all of my time advising companies about their skills opportunities and skill challenges. So great to be here. Great to be able to share step-by-step perspectives on how companies are thinking about skills.
Awesome. And if you haven't heard it in the last few sessions, guarantee you will leave this conference knowing this. That's it. We're here to help 1 billion people find the right work. That's our mission. That's what we're here for. Everything we've put together is for that purpose. And I know Deloitte has a very similar purpose. Lucas, you want to share a little bit on that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I do love the Phenom buzzwords. It's great. At Deloitte, we have a very similar premise. It's all about helping organizations think about putting humans in the center. In fact, across the world, Deloitte has about 400,000 professional services consultants that are serving clients in all spectrums of the industry sectors, size, government, commercial. We have people that advise companies on their talent strategies, their workforce development needs, their operations, their business processes, ... That's what Deloitte does. In the US alone, we have about 80,000 consultants. And one of the things that we have is this mantra that it's all about thinking about making work better for humans and making humans better at work. That's what we do. I sit in our human capital consulting practice, of which we do talent strategy, we do workforce development, workforce optimization, HR transformation, ... So for anybody in the audience, if you're wrestling with any of those things, please come talk to us. We're on the 3rd floor on the booth, but this is what we do.
Awesome. And I know you have a lot of experience in this space. We get asked these questions all the time, but I'm curious to hear it from the Deloitte perspective too. If this guy's clicks. Yes, it did click. I think I hear this once a day, maybe twice a day sometimes, sometimes more. But I'm sure everyone in the audience has the same question, right? Where do I even begin? How do I get started? Lucas, I'm curious from the Deloitte perspective. I can go on this topic for days on end, but I'm curious from your perspective, from your experience, where do customers begin? Where do you typically see that happening, and what do they do to get started?
Yeah, so this is probably the most fundamental question that we get. So as part of my role within Human Capital, I lead our US skills-based organization offering. So I talk to clients and organizations every single day about what they're trying to do and what they're trying to think about regarding how they get started. Hey, we're quick show of hands in the audience. How many of you actually have a distinct and direct answer to this for your own organizations? 5. Okay, so pertinent topic. When we think about how do I even begin and where to get started, what Jesus and I would like to do is we're going to share with you kind of a pragmatic approach. Now, I'm going to take you through a journey where instead of thinking about the 2-year journey that many organizations go on regarding their skills-based org transformations, I'm going to try and distill it down into 20 minutes. So it's going to go pretty fast. Please, by all means, if you want to dive into any of these topics in detail, contact us. And as I already see cameras, feel free, take as many pictures as you want. It all starts off with having a distinct idea around what are you actually trying to do with skills. So number 1, step 1, align on your skills strategy. And what that means is pinpointing the exact talent challenge that you're trying to solve with skills and being very laser focused in the talent process that you're going to drive it through and the workforce segment that it's going to impact. That is your North Star. You will always have to come back to it. So that's premise number 1. Number 2, we have organizations that are at that point where they're trying to figure out, how do I actually define the skills of the workforce and how do I assess them? So we'll talk about what some mechanisms are for setting your skills taxonomy and thinking about skills supply and demand. From there, Jesus will walk you through a demo around how platforms like Phenom can help leverage technology to drive better skills matching and skills inferences. And then first, certainly, picking pilots. We all heard a lot of people say as you're starting off on your skills journey, just start. My qualifier is start in the right area. So we'll actually walk you through each of these steps in detail. And Jesus and I will make this a conversation giving about what I see in the market and then what you see in the market.
That works great.
So step number one, align on your skills strategy. To us, what that means is be very laser focused in what problem you're trying to solve. So if you're in a business where it's all about growth and capability building, you might have a problem with talent acquisition, internal mobility, talent attraction. If that's your issue, be very laser focused that that's your problem. If you're in a business that's highly regulated focused, you're now trying to figure out how do skills fill competency or regulatory gaps, that is your talent challenge. I'd say be very laser focused on your talent problem because skills can address every aspect of the talent life cycle. And rather than trying to meander your way through or shepherd the organization through that journey, be close to what you're trying to solve and then build the case for it. The second part is, as you're starting to think about how to build your roadmap around what to do, I would not be surprised if there's a list of about 50 different things that you could do. Of course, given all capacity constraints and what you have to deliver on time, draw the line around what are we tactically going to do first, second, and third within a reasonable time frame given your resourcing and your organization mechanism. So for example, if you're starting to think about skills-based hiring, maybe this is, hey, we're going to be pretty clear that we're going to look at the job architecture, take that, define what the jobs are and the skills, and then we're going to embed that into the interview process. If that's your roadmap, start there, rather than trying to think about jobs, learning, internal ability all at once. And then the last thing is find the right teams. There's a lot of people within your organizations. I would be kind of shocked if you couldn't find a whole bunch of different teams that are already trying to do something with skills. I was working with a medical device company that when they started their skills journey about 2 years ago, they actually found that there were 8 different teams already working on skills. So find your friendlies, partner up with them, and then put their roadmap together. Jesus, what would you add to that?
It's funny, that last one, and I'm only bringing this up on the fly because they just waved. Talk to Merck KGA, by the way. They're up here up front. They're a great example of collaborating with the right teams. I mean, they came to us with 90 plus initiatives, something like that, around different businesses that have started some segments of this. But the problem with that is the data's never been connected. It's just this sector's talking to itself, this doesn't talk to other sectors. So it's really helping define not only the talent problem, but how and where do those skills flow in your organization and who should control them. I'd like to go back to a statement you had mentioned around defining the talent problem. A lot of times what I tend to hear off the bat is one of two things. And if you were in my session with BAE Systems yesterday, I think I saw them somewhere in here too. One of their problems was people weren't finding opportunities. They just kept leaving. They couldn't grow. They couldn't figure out how to grow, right? And that's a very common problem I continue to hear. How do we make things more transparent? But also the second problem I always hear is we just don't have data. We don't even know what our problems are because we just don't have data. It's outdated or it's in multiple systems. So I think honing in on that problem is always the best start.
Yeah, and one additional piece, it's okay if you have to come back to redefining what that problem is, right? Because as you start rolling things out, I would not be surprised that you'll hear a lot of support from different business units or functions, and it may require you to recalibrate, but do invest the time in getting number one right. Okay, so let's move along the journey, right? So 2 years down into 20 minutes. Let's say that you're at the point where you're already trying to figure out, how do I actually assess skills in the workforce, given the supply and demand needs of skills and capabilities? 3 things to consider. The first being, organizations spend a good amount of time defining how they're going to build their skills taxonomies and identify the actual critical skills that they're trying to upskill or acquire. It's all about understanding from your business capability lens, how does that decompose to jobs, of course, but then to tasks and skills. Following that waterfall, you're able to figure out the actual critical skills that you're trying to develop. The next piece, though, is a lot of companies spend time figuring out what is the right skills taxonomy. So if you think about how do my enterprise-wide skills tie into functional skills that then might tie into job-specific skills, what's the cascade? Because if your thought is that enterprise skills sits across all functions and all jobs, invest the time in getting that right. The more job-specific skills, hey, that's where you can partner with the business to make those tactical decisions. Another thing that companies get hung up on is, well, how many skills should we have? And what's the right amount of proficiency levels that we should actually think about? And do we need detailed proficiency descriptions, or can we just go with generic descriptions? I'll say those questions are probably more an HR question. Your business leaders probably don't care, as long as you get the top two right. But I'm not saying that the bottom isn't important. As they're starting to make decisions around the level of proficiencies and descriptions or not, some of the ingested data points that you could consider are, what's the constraints in the platforms that it's going to go into, who's going to maintain this, and what am I going to actually use if I use that data for if I go down that level of detail. Other things, quick things around skills assessment methods. There's a whole variety of them. You could do self-assessment, manager assessment, validation. To us, it's all a point of what are you trying to assess for and how valid does the data need to be. Manager assessment, validated assessment, not always needed. And then last is, how do you think about governance and management of skills?
I think that last one, if you were at the keynote this morning, you saw how we're using agents to bring a little bit more of governance around key stakeholders, how they approve skills. I think one thing I continue to hear is, especially as you're defining who's assessing your skills, how are you defining the skills at the workforce, I think a lot of times what I tend to hear and what I get from customers is not only the question that you just mentioned, how many skills do I need, what's the right number? I think I have my own perception of what the right number is, anywhere from 15 to 20, that's my personal opinion. I think that's a little bit easier to calibrate, a little bit easier to work with, not overwhelming. But the second piece to that is jobs change, skills change. Don't forget to maintain them. That's very critical. And the best way to do that is to build a really good governance model. Who should do what? To your point, your hiring managers are more likely closer to your skills. They should have a say in a lot of this. It shouldn't all fall on just HR. But of course, you can't just have everybody going in and adding skills, right? You gotta have some control over it to ensure you have the top quality skills, because at the end of the day, you might end up leveraging this across different business processes, from succession planning to performance management to merit increases to interviews and coaches. There's a number or a multitude of ways that you can use skills, and making sure that you have the right structures and governance around that is very critical. For sure.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jesus. All right, step number 3. So as you start to think about how to apply skills in your organizations, technology and the pace of the improvements in technology capabilities has been phenomenal. So as you're starting to think about how do you tap into HR tech and intelligent talent intelligence platforms, my first recommendation is scan within your own ecosystem first what you might already have. I was working with a pharmaceutical company on this, where unbeknownst to them, they actually had over 100 different tools used for every part of the skills and development process. They were astounded. They didn't even know that those tools existed. So just, hey, do the first thing, scan what you already have and do some discovery. From there, then start looking outside into the vendor ecosystem and see what additional capabilities you can tap into. One final thing, and then I know Jesus will give us a quick demo. As you're starting to think about platforms, go and ask your providers, right, about their roadmap, about what they're seeing other companies use their capabilities for. That kind of intelligence is phenomenal.
Awesome. Let me jump in. Hopefully I didn't get timed out. Let me jump in. I'll just do a very, very quick demo on just how Phenom uses technology to kind of help really bridge the gap of the question of where do I start. I have one simple slide. I didn't want to throw it onto this deck because it's animational, and I wanted to just very briefly highlight this. Phenom has been building ontologies for quite a while. You've probably heard it in our keynote yesterday. You've heard it in our innovation. We've been building ontologies for quite some time. And part of that ontology is how we bring skills to the market, how we bring skills to you, how we help you accelerate that process. This is where technology really plays a critical role. And if you look at this, it looks very simple. Right? It looks like there's five slices up there, but it's actually a lot more complex. We try to simplify it as much as possible, but it's a culmination of three things, really. Four things, actually. Our own ontology, what we've built for the last 13, 14 years plus. All of you here get access to that. It doesn't matter whether you're using talent management, whether you're using talent acquisition. We're using the same sort of ontology across our entire platform. What does that ontology look like? I'll show it to you in just a second. But what makes everything a little bit unique is how we contextualize it to you. I always like to use the most simplest of terms. A project manager in healthcare is totally different than a project manager in manufacturing. Same titles though. So how do we bring that context of your industry, your jobs, your titles into our ontology to really make it personalized to you? And the last 2 points is really human validation and dynamic nature of market changes. All of that is really what culminates our ontology. So what does that actually look like? Well, let me jump over into one of our ontologies here. I'm going to just use the first one I see. Hopefully this looks okay for everybody. It's not too small. What that means is regardless of customer data, regardless of what you have today, what you may not have, we've already built a normalized ontology standard to market nomenclatures, market occupational codes, titles, activities. That has also led us to build standard skills across different ontologies or different industries. So these are already things that we have, that we already know, that we've built. But to take that even further, I'm going to grab a random skill here. I don't know enough about immunology. If I even pronounced that right, I probably didn't. But we've taken that even further where, to your point a little bit earlier, around descriptions, definitions, what's the right description to use, what's the right definition to use. Technology really helps facilitate that or expedite that process. We've already defined skills across the board. We've defined definitions. We've defined similarities and relationships of skills. This is where technology plays a crucial role to help you expedite that process. We've already clustered all of our skills from domains to subcategories to categories. We've even started working on multilingual skills. How do you accept skills in English and Spanish, or Spanish and Portuguese, or German and English, or Chinese and English? How do you create a match that understands that these relationships of skills matter, especially when we think about employee experience, when we think about HR experience, right? When we think about analytics, when we think about talent acquisition. It's all powered by the same language, regardless of whether it's in English or Spanish or any other language, especially for those that are global in the audience. But let's jump back to maybe back to the slides. If there's any questions, we have a demo booth in our AI labs that will walk you through this as well. We can also do a much deeper dive into skills. If you're interested in viewing skills for your own organization, we offer and provide customers with a very quick snapshot of some of your critical skills. Just let us know if you're interested. We can get you a snapshot created fairly quickly.
Thanks. Nice demo.
Now I think we're going to talk about the fun one, the pilot group.
All right, so I said that there are 4 steps condensed down into 20 minutes. I think we have maybe 5 minutes.
10 minutes, we got 10 minutes.
So step number 4, final step as you're starting to think about your journey, is probably one of the more important ones. Is everybody's going to say pilot, right? Pilot and test and learn. I'll give you some qualifiers and what I've seen constitute successful pilots versus some that haven't. You can call them the 4 S's, whatever you'd want to call it. And it seems pretty, fundamental. But number 1, pick the pilot that's sensible for your business leaders and employees to accept. If you think about it, if you're trying to solve a business or a talent challenge, focus on one that's going to give them immediate benefit, alleviation of pain, sensible. And I say sensible because some of the pilots that people have run have been a year-long pilot. And then it goes to my next one is, you may want to think about piloting something that's more contained, something that's small. And when I say small, it doesn't have to be small impact. It might more so be like small population, smaller part of the talent process, smaller group of key stakeholders to manage, something that you're actually going to be able to get a handle of pretty quickly. Because the third thing, the third S is you're gonna have to find, or I would suggest piloting it with a group that's supportive, right? So as you're starting to think about rolling out skills into a talent process, some people may perceive it as a disruption of an ingrained talent process that has been around for quite some time. And they might push back on how much is this going to have to require us to change how we run our business? How much is this going to have to change how we help and work with our HRBPs? How much is this going to have to change on how we work with our line level managers? So find the group that's the friendly, or those that the business leader would say, this is absolutely critical to solve whatever our problem is, and that's why we want to put our money there. And then once you do pilot it, showcase it, right? Like, hey, no shame, go on the road show and talk about the benefits. In fact, even better, have your employees talk about the benefits because those personal testimonies will pay dividends in return. Just my perspectives of pilots. Jesus, what would you want to add?
I think you hit all the points. The one thing I will add to this, be nimble. Perfection isn't always the answer. A lot of times you will have to get some of that feedback and just be nimble to be able to change where and as needed. Again, this is a journey for many of you, and that's why most of you will probably actually do more pilot orientations, because you want to get sort of that feedback. You want to create the champions. You want to create those that would go out for you on your behalf on the company to say, this is a great tool. This is a great tool. You should use it. Yeah. I think you covered all the points I would have touched on.
You know, going back to the point around, like, I wouldn't be surprised if your list of, or, you know, a list of roadmap initiatives might be 50 long. I wouldn't be surprised if you do come up with a list of 20 prospective pilots. What might help is create your pilot criteria or your pilot rubric and grade it, including things like, certainly these 4 S's, but maybe things like your capacity, your level of influence, your ability, or, you know, your capital investment requirements. That kind of quantitative criteria might help alleviate the pressure you're going to get from a variety of functions or businesses that want you to serve them first. Very, very final slide. So like I mentioned, we've been advising companies about skills for quite some time. Some of the things that we've learned over the past couple of years, at the very first onset of skills-based organization, there was this notion that would skills replace jobs? In my personal opinion, it's not a replacement of jobs, it's a complement to jobs. It's a complement to processes that have already been working. It's a way to fuel it to go faster. Skills can connect different parts of the talent life cycle so that the employee experience is a bit more crisper. So to me, skills is a complement. Something else we've learned over the past couple of years is you can overcomplicate the process pretty quickly, so do not. So if you're starting to think about skills as part of the hiring process, think about the steps in the hiring process where you might want to be intentional about how skills fits in versus those that you might want to require or those that you might want to have to put into hiring guides. So like that's just an example. I do not think that an organization has to revamp and redocument every part of their process to then pilot a process. Third thing, this is something that we've learned quickly is that technology alone will not solve the problem. So there used to be this perception that I'm going to just turn it on and I'll figure it out maybe in a few iterations, but not today. For example, I'm working with a tech organization that is using skills, and the skills have already been mapped to jobs through AI, and what they're trying to then do is look at it and say, what's the human involvement to validate that this is correct? So you always have to do that. So if there's this perception that from your business leaders that, hey, we just implemented this new technology, does this fix everything? Still not the case. And then the last, move with speed. Especially with something as nebulous and promising as skills, your business leaders will not wait for benefits or for value. My thoughts, what additional lessons learned, Jesus?
You got me there. I think you got all of them again. I really want to harp on that last one. I think I've seen time and time again where utilization of a tool like this, like a marketplace or like a skills-driven operations, tends to fail when you overcomplicate it, or when you're just not moving fast enough. This is like any other product. You're going to implement it, you're going to launch it, you're going to evolve it, and that's the way it should be. It's you're gonna take learnings from jobs. You're going to take learnings from the market, from managers, from your HRBPs. You're going to take many learnings. It's about moving with the intention to know that it's not a once and done activity, but it's also not a everyday activity, right? Sure, skills are going to change, but this isn't something you have to do on a daily basis for every single job or every single position. But knowing that you have something out there, that you're making a difference, you're changing the perspective of your employees to have more opportunities, is already goes a long way. So I think you hit all the points, honestly.
And just in the crowd here with probably 250 of us in the room, I'd imagine that there's even more. I'd imagine there's a pretty rich list of lessons learned.
Yes.
So this kind of gathering of people that have like-minded passions to do something with skills, this is gold. So do connect, do network. One of the things is, it's been a pleasure for Jesus and I to connect with you. Feel free to connect with us, right? So
Connect with us.
Happy to continue the conversation. And Jesus, I know that you have a booth up there on the third.
We have a booth. We have all of you here. So look to your left, look to your right. I'm sure you're all in very similar positions in terms of where and how you're trekking along on skills-based organization changes. Again, I can see a bunch of here. I see a lot of familiar faces I've talked to at some point in time, so I can call out a few to make everyone uncomfortable a little. Cigna Group's back there. I see ACCO over here. I see Merck KGaA over here. BAE Systems is back there. And if I missed anybody, I blame the light. I can't really see too far back there. But yeah, feel free to connect with us. Come up if you have any questions. We're here to really just share our experiences, what we've seen work and what we haven't seen work.
So with that, thank you very much. Good afternoon.